or not it's tolerable in a civilized society to have the playing field vertical and stacked against the consumer. And, can we tolerate, the deception, the lack of transparency, the brute power play of these institutions? No, they need to come down. They are not serving humanity.
As a former assistant attorney general and escrow attorney, I can safely say that America's legal compass dangles in a very precipitous state when big money interests have co-opted the very institution that our citizens rely on for consumer protection. Are the foxes watching the henhouse in the nation's capital and in Washington state? Some have even argued that it's tantamount to a pedophile watching a daycare center. Now, this is part one of several, and in this part, I will share the Stacie Solie feature on bought and sold attorneys general that was vetted by the New York Times last year. In the story, Reporter Solie specifically mentions Washington AG Bob Ferguson's ethical challenges in reportedly shaking down the 5-hour energy drink people in this story last year, before two major developments have come to light in Washington. In no particular order, first, the Seattle City Auditor and other government employees conspired to put a muzzle on the contents of the land records audit conducted by Marie McDonald Analytics. The audit focused on the implausible constructions that MERS uses to legitimize a clearly flawed business model that allows for transfers of property without any predicate ownership interest. McDonald's local mentor and consultant was, of course, attorney Scott Staffney, who will be on the air with me on the Susan Harmon Hour this Friday at noon, 11:50 a.m. Now, I have run several successful Staffney Law hearings on videos, and I am further aware that his client won a partial summary judgment motion against MERS in Snohomish County's case of Schiavone versus MERS in September of 2015, and MERS lost their motion for summary judgment. So now, despite that, or some would argue because of that type of spirit, we come now to issue number 2, with Attorney General Bob Ferguson issuing a subpoena to Attorney Staffney, which in turn led Attorney Staffney to inquire as to the relationship between Ferguson, Seattle City Hall, Attorney Roush, and two recent foreclosure mill attorneys who Ferguson hired, one being Attorney Roush. Okay? Now, this leads to the obvious concern of neutrality, because I am not aware of any recent hires by Ferguson of homeowner attorneys, okay, for his staff. So there's immediately a conflict of interest issue of the same nature that I covered in New Hampshire with its Committee on Redressing Grievances several years ago. Watch this.
Whenever citizens claim injury, it's the duty of that office to protect them. However, that same office has a duty to protect the agencies. So, who do they work for?
As a former Marine Corps officer who swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States, I never thought I'd be in the position to have to do that and fight for it against my own Attorney General and my own state agencies.
Redress of grievances in New Hampshire has already proved to be a lightning rod, a bellwether. It's already exposed systemic and institutional problems and will serve into the future to tell us, your representatives, how to make our government the best it can be for you. Thank you very much.
Now, as seen here in these emails, Attorney Roush, of course, was involved in the investigation against Cal Western. Now, I sent him some information I had discovered during a mediation. You can see it there on my Mortgage Movies Journal website, right there. And he sent me a consent decree that I was looking for. Now, that's good for what it's worth, which really isn't much, because it doesn't go into the systemic problems of fraud and deceit that run rampant in the chain of title. Now, in fact, it's arguably window dressing. And so now, of course, Attorney Roush's LinkedIn page is no longer visible. And some are, of course, arguing that that's because of all the corporate involvement that was on that page. But anyway, let's look at the national revolving door trend as witnessed by AG Eric Holder and his purported prosecutor Lenny Brewer, neither of whom seem to be able to indict, much less prosecute, a ham sandwich during their entire mortgage industry debacle. All right? You got Eric Holder and Lenny Brewer, right back to Covington Burling. All right? And in Washington, you've got Roush and David Davies. So, I'm just... But I'll leave you for now then But stay tuned for part 2, in which I telephone Attorney General Ferguson's office and ask for a brief interview on some of these issues, because we all know his support for open government is legendary, as he believes that, even private emails of public employees are within the purview of open records requests. Now, I lost on that same exact issue some years ago in New Hampshire, and there's a link on my website to that case, or to the facts of that case. So I'm glad to know that we're making progress in America, and I fully anticipate that AG Ferguson will readily invite me in for an interview session on video. Stay tuned to see that.